Nice walleye. I love casting crankbaits. This is a good sized fish. I'm gonna just turn my electric off. You know, we've had a storm all day and it just stopped raining. So this is about my 5th or 6th cast. It's a nice walleye to start things off. And let me just get it out. It just rolled in the net. We're going to see how tangle free this net is or isn't. Wow. Maybe I should have waited a little bit. How am I going to do this? That's what happens when they roll in the line. This net has like a vinyl coating, so hopefully the hooks won't get stuck in it. It's a net that a lot of the tournament walleye guys use, not just for walleye but for all kinds of fish, and you know, so far I'm pretty impressed with it. Let me just see if I can get that out. It's not hooked too bad. One there, and I've got my pliers handy right here. Let's see here. Get that out. I gotta admit, that's a nice looking walleye. It's a good eating size fish, but you know what? I'm gonna release that guy. Look at, he's gorgeous. What a beautiful color walleye. Just one last look. Beautiful fish. And if I can get the hook out of the net, I'm just going to put him down on the floor for a minute. I'm going to be putting him in the net for the release so he can swim out. Most guys would keep that walleye. It's about 18 inches. But you know what? I'm going to be releasing it. Didn't have it out of the water too long. Yeah, I like that net. Come on, get your teeth out of there. Wrong way, buddy. And he should be, there he goes. Gorgeous. Yeah, this is a great net. It's an RC Nets made in the USA, so it's good quality. So I'm going to keep working this weed line, because like I say, I couldn't get out all day because of the rough conditions. So it's been raining, stormy, so you can see that it's pretty dark out. What I'm doing is I'm using a special rod. This is a Duckett. It's a Walleye Series rod that I worked with Duckett's for almost 2 years to produce. And this is the 7 foot. It's 7 feet long, and they call it the medium action. And in a minute I'm going to explain to you why this works so well. So if you watch on a wide shot when I go to cast, you can see even here that the tip is pretty stiff, but it's flexible to about here. Then you get into the spine. So for casting, when I load and cast like a bullet, number one. Number two, you might notice that the diameter of the material here is a little bit wider. That's because it's very lightweight, but to make a rod that's strong and lightweight, you have to increase the diameter but make a thinner wall. So it's extremely sensitive. And if you pick one of these up, the first thing you'll notice is that the rod is very light. So when I say very light compared to other rods in its class, other brands, the lightness makes it very sensitive and very easy to cast. And I have it matched with the 2500 reel, so it's perfectly balanced. You can see I can actually take my finger and just balance it right there. So I can cast all day long crankbaits. And I just marked a school of bait fish that I just went by on my fish finder. So I'm going to keep working the edge of this. It's kind of like a reef out in the open here. You know, one of the best times to fish for walleye is when there's low light, because they can see so well. So that's what I'm doing here. So I can get another fish to hit. Nice long cast. So this 7 foot rod has a really good spine. You could actually troll up to 2-3 ounce weighted systems like the bottom walking spinners, but to me it's ideal for casting. It's got the length, and right now I'm actually casting into the wind, and there's no problem penetrating that wind. I'm getting about 50 feet on my cast, And you can see just from the tip jingling, the action on the crankbait, and how only the first little bit of the rod is thrumming. That tells me that it's a very sensitive tip. So what I like for cranking, the rod is soft enough at the tip, so when a walleye grabs it, you can let the fish take it for a split second. So he's got it in his mouth, you don't want to rip it out. And then when you go to set the hook is set, just like on that fish, he had the two trebles hooked in him, no problem. You know, I tell people when it comes to fishing that timing is everything, and it is. You can be on the best spot. If the fish aren't there or they're inactive, you're not going to catch them. So I'm working this, it's the right time. So I'm not going to spend too much time out here because I don't want to be out in the dark. We might get another cell of rain come in, but I'm going to work it for a little bit. One thing that I'm doing, I'm using the electric so that I have total control on my positioning. So I'm just at the edge of this reef, and because this is the first day in June, the weeds are just starting to grow up. So what I'm doing is working this edge because I know if there's any fish here, they're moving into these areas to feed, probably on panfish. The primary panfish where I'm fishing here, this is the eastern end of Lake Ontario, are perch, which are part of the walleye family. They're their smaller cousins. So they literally inhabit the same waters, and the walleye love to feed on the perch. And I have a feeling that the big perch, if they can get their mouths on small walleye, you know, fry and juveniles, they probably eat them too. They're not too fussy. That was nice to get that fish. It was a good eater. And sometimes I'll get fish, you know, almost up to 30 inches doing this, just casting crankbaits. Can you see that? From the tip, 1, 2, 3, 4, about the fourth guide. That's there. Put it closer to you so you can see it. Okay, so the bend is at about the fourth guide. I'll put more pressure on, it's still at the fourth guide. So the rest of the rod, tons of spine, very powerful. Okay, you can see it like this, okay? So remember I mentioned that the blank has a larger diameter, but it's not heavy. Can you see here the diameter of the blank? Those are the specks on the rod right there. And the reel that matches it. So the reason you want a 7-foot rod for this type of fishing, the longer your rod, the more torque you have when you cast. That was a hang time of about 4 to 5 seconds. Think of it, if any of you golf, the farthest ball that you can hit is with your driver, which is the longest club in your bag. So you can use a shorter rod for casting crankbaits, whether it's for bass or for any species of fish, including walleye. But if you have a 7-foot rod, it's the ideal length, just like the ideal length for a driver in golf, that enables you to catapult the cast out. So normally I'll use one hand, but I'll also use 2 hands. So I'll demonstrate again. And a lot of people that I fish with that don't use a catapult cast don't really know what I mean. So when I say catapult, I take my right hand and I have it on the line. My left hand is right here, and then I use a leverage system to get that lure to go. Just hit the water now. Hang time of about 4 seconds again. So the reason I like long casts, when I'm fishing for walleye and they're along weed beds or weed lines or even in open water, I want to cover as much water as possible. I'll troll for them, but when I'm casting for them, it's a lot more exciting when they hit, because walleye, when they hit a crankbait, whether it's trolling or casting, are feeding. When they're hitting like a harness with a worm, to me they're not really that active. Or if you're using a jig with bait, which is very common, or a slip bobber or a Lindy rig, you know, Duckett has different rods in their Walleye series, especially for that, more finesse fishing. And I'll tell you about that in some of the other videos. But right now for casting, the 7-foot or the 6/8 is perfect for casting crankbaits for walleye. So depending where you are in North America, you know, some guys fish crankbaits, so that's why we designed these 2 rods that are the medium action. They're called medium action, but they're actually quite stiff for casting crankbaits. They're part of the Duckett Walleye Series. And then also 2 rods that are designed for more heavy-duty trolling using inline planer boards, which I'll talk about in another video. They're telescopic. They're like 7, 10, and 8 feet long. Because you want a long rod when you're trolling, especially the inline planer boards, because you want your lines to be out of the water. You don't want the waves to hit them. But also if you're using heavier rigs, sometimes I'll troll in the Great Lakes like Lake Erie up to an 8-ounce bottom bouncer instead of using like jet divers or using downriggers. And they work really well for getting walleye when they're in water more than 50 feet deep, sometimes 50, 60, 80 feet deep. And they'll do that in the Great Lakes. So you can see that I have no problem casting far. And I've got my finger actually right on the blank here, so I can feel everything. Super sensitive rod, very lightweight, extremely strong, which is ideal when you're casting crankbaits. Because sometimes doing this, I've hooked salmon up to 30 pounds, fishing for walleye, big channel catfish up to 20 pounds. So it's really important to use a rod that's suited for the type of fishing that you're doing. You could use any rod, but I'll tell you what, your game ups up once you have the rod that's right reel. I've also got it loaded with 20-pound braid, which is really smart because the braid doesn't stretch. And then I've got a fluorocarbon leader at the end for about 20 inches. So it's a perfect setup for these walleye when you're cranking the weed lines. Yes, the sun came out, got another fish on. Went down into some weeds, just trying to get up around the boat. Wonder if it's a northern, the way it's running. But then, you know, I've caught some walleye that have a lot of power. Man, it's a good sized fish. It'd be nice if it was a big walleye. Come on, got me down into the weeds. Get up there. Could be a freshwater drum. How the heck have I hooked here? Tons of power. It'd be nice to see what it is. To land it to show you. What are you? It's a big freshwater drum. Just shows you that these Duckett Walleye rods can handle really big fish. Come here. Man, this guy's got tons of power. You can see the way this rod is bent, that spine at work. Lots of energy. Can't flip this guy in the boat. Come on. Oh yeah, beautiful drum. He's just got the back hook in his mouth. Come here. Oh. Okay. Tell you what, he's a handful. Get the pliers because I got a feeling I'm going to need them. And that sun is peeking through, which is nice. So we can get a good look at this fish. Get that net out. I'll tell you, I'm loving that net. Look at it. Isn't this a nice freshwater drum? I don't know how big he is, but he's pretty heavy. And he nailed that crankbait. Just got hooked right on the back. Gorgeous fish. He wasn't going to get off. They've got nice rubbery mouths, so those hooks really hold in there. So it's not a walleye, but you know what? A lot of fun. Isn't that a gorgeous fish? Time to get him back in the water. Back in the net. Oh, and over the side. They grow big. You can get them over 20 pounds. You ready to go? Yep. There he goes.